What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode, Axioms on Trial. I'm J Mike. Alongside me always is Mr. Cease to know. Cease, what is going on? I saw you've had some debates on the channel. Keeping the flag raised. How's it been going outside of Axioms? What's the life
It's
like?
been good. Well, there was the one debate that was incredibly ridiculous, and then the other one was just more of like a conversation. It wasn't really a debate, and that was a little bit. Well, that was definitely a better, I think, more fruitful conversation.
Sure.
I do want to bring up real quick before I forget. I think that YouTube is having some weird, some.
Oh, you might have the thing open.
Oh, there we go. Some weird issues. Yeah, I was wondering what that was doing. Like, all my headphones are plugged in. How am I hearing myself? It's having some weird issues because some comments I think are not getting posted. Like I'm getting notifications that some people are posting something on the videos, and then when I click on the comment, it's not coming up. It's saying that it's not there. So if in anyone who I'm not responding to, just know, maybe try posting it again. Like there was one comment by somebody, I forget their username, that they were saying something about, I think they were making a comment about being an avid fan, but I think there was some issue with the audio or something. But I couldn't see the whole comment because when I clicked on it, it didn't. It didn't show me. Yeah, my apps are all updated. I think YouTube is incorrectly seeing some comments as spam when they're not spam.
There's this thing in the studio thing where I think it holds comments until you push them through. So maybe we should look at that. I haven't looked at that at all.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't notice it was even taking away comments. So that's the first time I've actually.
Yeah, I wasn't. I mean, I'm not aware that the settings or anything like that. I thought all like I'm not seeing comments and then letting them post. Maybe there was, I don't know. Yeah.
Leo is
So
in case that makes sense because we would get the thing I know that's weird is that we get comments that are like obviously spam that don't get deleted. We have to delete them ourselves.
Yeah. So in case any of you have written comments, I think there was one a few videos ago that I wasn't able to respond to. So anyone who's commented and didn't get a response, that's why. But hopefully we can figure it out.
Yeah, that's I didn't even really realize that. So yeah, I wouldn't imagine you're deleting the comments.
No, I wouldn't delete any comments.
Yeah.
I would never do that. I mean, other than the ones that are clearly like bots or whatever. Sure. I don't care what people are saying. I will leave it up.
Yeah. That's good to get right out of the way at the beginning. So today we are going to get into looking at the philpapers survey, and I think
just gotta address this real quick. Yeah, it is freezing in here. Like I can't deal with the winters in this existence anymore.
Yeah, I'm always miserable too, and I live in the South, but it's still like it'll be like 38 or 37, and people here are just like, it's the end of the world. But so today we're going to go over the philpapers survey. I just want to kind of get out of the way. I was telling Cease before the show, it's like I'm probably going to piss a lot of people off because I'm more of a skeptic on a lot of. There's a lot of things. I guess me and Cease need to do a whole episode on the role of language in philosophy. There's things that I have issues with, and so I'm a skeptic on a lot of positions based on the role of language. I guess you'd say privatization of language in that sense, the access to one's meaning when they use words as opposed to internal understanding of your own. There's things that I have issues with, but beyond that, like even when I call myself a moral anti-realist, which is a pretty firm position, I almost prefer the term like moral skeptic because I'm just very skeptical in the meta-ethical domain as well as any other domain. So just want to get out of the way if I piss you off with me saying I'm not as committed to this view. get over it. So
Yeah.
that's all I will give for my caveats. Do you have anything before we start?
No, I haven't looked at this yet, so I'm excited to see what you have in store here for me.
Well, we will. Yeah, I woke up from a nap, so I'm a sleepy J Mike today. So also bear with me on that. But we'll go through them as we can and see if we can get through them all. We might skim some or even skip a few, like Experience Machine. I don't really care about that, or Newcomb's Box. I'm not really. I think they're interesting, but it's not really my focus on in philosophy. Um, you're actually somebody who actually has an education in it. I'm someone that does it as a hobby, so I'm not necessarily educated on really all these topics. And I think you specify in your education, right? I mean, you have a specific thesis you're writing, and
Yeah. I'm just finishing my thesis on postmodernism. So I wonder if any of this will address those questions at all.
yeah, I haven't really got to look through all of them, but yeah, let's do it. So, a priori knowledge, yes or no? And first, should we kind of give just a background on a priori knowledge versus a posteriori knowledge, just for people that don't understand the concept?
Yeah, sure.
Terms? Sure. So, one could say when you view things like a priori knowledge, you're viewing it through the lens of like prior to experience, or things of like a deductive nature. People might categorize mathematics as some form of a priori knowledge, whereas you have like the contrasting view of not view, but the contrast would be like a posteriori knowledge, which is basically like things of an empirical nature, right? Things of induction, utilizing the actual world. And so the question here to say like a priori knowledge, yes or no, is to say like, do you believe that we have a priori knowledge, some knowledge kind of before experience? I lean towards no, actually, even though I think there's a methodological utility to it. I'm not going to say no, but I do lean to some form of empiricism. I would say maybe not like the classic empiricism, but so I would lean towards no. I would say not accept, but probably lean towards.
Yeah, I think I actually lean towards no as well. Like, I think there is a valid distinction, but I think ultimately it all comes back to experience first. But I'm not. I think I lean less no than you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do think that there is some value to having that distinction, but I'm just not sure that you can. I still think that the starting place ultimately is experience.
Yeah. It's for me. I have a lot of questions, and maybe people who are hard on the. Of course, we have a priori knowledge, right? But maybe they could come in and tame some issues. I don't think I have some silver bullet, and that's in any of my positions. I would say that, and you even said before the show you have some issues with positions I have, and you want to show how some of them have tension. And,
Yeah, I think that,
and perhaps a lot of them do, and that's fine. But for me, I hold a lot of these tenably. So
yeah, I don't think a lot of them do. I think mostly it's your moral anti-realism versus the way that you look at language. I think there's a bit of a conflict there.
sure, that's a great thing to look at. I'd be looking forward to see your objections.
Because the reason why I'm a realist about it is actually because I have, I think, a similar view on language than you do.
Okay.
So so
that's actually really interesting, and I think I kind of understand. You've given me that point, but maybe I don't fully understand it enough to see the tension that you've identified. But let's go ahead and move on. Abstract objects, Platonism, nominalism. I'm definitely a nominalist, but I want to first say that the results here are pretty interesting. That there's like
well, let's go over real quick what those are.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you want to?
Yeah. So nominalism, and I'm just going to read exactly the definition so I don't get anything wrong here. is the doctrine that universals or general ideas are mere names without any corresponding reality, and that only particular objects exist. Properties, numbers, and sets are all thought of as merely features of the way of considering the things that exist. And then, in contrast to that, Platonism is, let's find the exact definition. It's the idea that abstract objects are objective, like they're entities that in some form actually exist out there.
Maybe you should elaborate on abstract objects for people.
Yeah, so it's a little bit difficult because I don't think that I have ever fully really understood what was meant by it. Like, I think it's this idea that they're independent of the physical world, and yet they still exist, and we're just using symbols to kind of represent these forms that exist non-physically, but in some sense still exist out there. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, like, I've heard from some people that the way they've put it to me that makes sense is it's like not naturally reducible, right. And so they would be some of the people that I know would consider themselves like non-naturalists, but they're atheists, right? But they're non-naturalists, and for reasons like where they'll break down things like abstract objects to where there's a reason in terms of not being able to break down it from a naturalized view or something. I don't fully understand it, though I'm very intrigued, and I gotta I need to really inquire more before I try to steelman the position. But yeah, so Leo says Danny is an atheist and non-naturalist. That's actually one of the people I've talked to. I haven't talked to him a whole bunch, but over the years.
I gotta actually get back to him because we were talking in email and
that's right.
Trying to set up a time. But I with all the stuff that's going on, I haven't managed to get back to him. But yeah, so you said you're a nominalist, right?
Yeah, I would say I accept nominalism.
Yeah, I would say that I'm definitely not a Platonist. Like, I don't think that abstract objects are a thing. I'm not convinced, however, that categories are entirely like a construction, right? Like, I lean more towards the nominalist, but I'm not fully there either.
I've been actually entertained a lot with views on Platonism, just in general. I've been a lot more open to a lot of. Let me learn how to speak English, Mike. I've been a lot more open to positions that previously I rejected outright based on just certain biases I've had. Right, philosophy. There's a question here about aim of philosophy, and I take that there really is none. We'll get there, but I think for me, it's been the goal of breaking down these types of biases that you have and coming to an actual position that seems coherent once you find like, oh, that's incompatible with this, and you should revise that. And I want to know that. So you get into that kind of predicament. Some people fight that, but once you accept that more, I think it's that's like the aim for me at least. But I'm going to answer the question that there is no aim once we get to it. But at least I don't think there's an identifiable one. But.
Right.
So yeah, move on. We got to probably speed things up. Aesthetic value. This is one we can just go through pretty quickly. Subjective for me. Pretty obvious.
Yeah. Well, I think the question is misleading because I think that subjective there is used in a way that's problematic. Relative kind of means anything goes, and I don't think subjective has to mean that. Like, if we
mind dependency versus mind independency, would you agree with that? Because I think that's
I would say aesthetic value is clearly mind dependent. That doesn't mean that there isn't an objective value. Again, I don't think of objective as being mind independent. I think that's
you as a moral realist. That's kind of a principle I think that's underlined within assessing like normative values anyway, right? So or normative assessments, right? So
I think it's a slightly different way of looking at what is meant by objective. If by objective they mean mind independent, then of course I would say subjective. But I tend to think of just what exists, what is the case.
We're
real.
we could do a whole episode on that between me and you, because that position I don't understand.
Yeah. And it may be just an issue of semantics at
Sure.
that point.
Yeah, I think it would identify a lot of the issues we have with in metaethics. Okay, actually, it's the next question. So your answer would be you lean towards subjectivism, but
yeah, I would say.
Or would you put other just based on,
I would say other.
Yeah. Okay. Aim of philosophy. What's most important? I guess here you have epistemic reasons, truth, knowledge, understanding, or maybe happiness, goodness, justice. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, I guess people go towards epistemic
Wait, what
considerations.
Can you make that bigger?
No, honestly, I tried to do that before the stream, and that's about, unfortunately, as good as I can go. You can full screen StreamYard though, but it'll take away the comments, I think, so you won't be able to see.
Okay, now I can see.
I every time I zoom in on it, it like messes with the entire layout of the thing. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
For me, I find it difficult to separate these things. I think they're all valuable in different ways. Like, I don't think that I would be able to really choose in that way.
Do you just go with other?
Yeah, because I think all of those I think are actually connected.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think you can get to happiness without wisdom, without good understanding, without living in a world that cares about justice. Like I don't think that you can have one without the other.
You wouldn't, but with the question of which is most important, you wouldn't be able to just.
No, because I think they're all probably equally important.
Not even if you categorized it like epistemic versus maybe like normative values or something like.
Yeah, I don't think I would be able to do that.
Yeah, I understand that. I think the question's weird to me because I don't know that. I think that's kind of if there's an issue, in my opinion, like an analytic philosophy of defining, you hear Oppie and Rasmussen go back and forth on, and they use the example in analytic philosophy of like defining a cat, right, and breaking down like what it means to be a cat, right, and people that get into analytic philosophy or listen to these conversations, like it gives you a chuckle, but for me it's funny to ask that question of aim of philosophy, because I just find that it's like the whole domain for like analytic philosophy has been a problem of like analytically defining things, or whether or not there's this distinction, of analytic or synthetic, and so when you ask that question, or when that question's asked, I'm just like, I don't know how we identify the whole, and we're still really working on parts not even being fully understood. But and that leads us to analytic synthetic distinction, yes or no. You can pretty much just, I guess, look towards Quine's views. I pretty much line up with that. I think there's like utility in analytic synthetic distinctions, but I kind of lean towards that no, given that I'm some brand of empiricism.
Right. Yeah, we kind of answered that before.
Yeah.
With the first question.
And so you'd be similar, I would presume.
I think less. I lean towards no, but probably not so much as you. Not that you probably are there that much, but like.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm going to answer other to a lot of these. Like I said, I think there is a distinction, but I do think that ultimately it's hard to really detach any kind of processing of information from experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Alrighty. This is fun.
Yeah.
Sorry, I like getting these positions kind of down, or at least looking at them from this lens. It's interesting. So eating animal products, permissible to eat or not? You take the floor.
I think this is a difficult one, because I do think that there are people, and I'm not, I haven't done a ton of research on this, so I could be very easily convinced otherwise, but I do think there are people who have certain kind of chemical imbalances who need level of protein that they can't get from just eating vegetables and that kind of stuff. I could be completely wrong about that. It's just what I've heard. I tend to think that on a moral level, it's hard to defend eating meat for me. Do I do it? Yeah. So this is one area where kind of my moral intuition doesn't really align currently with my actual behavior.
Sure.
I know that like if I had to hunt for my food, I don't think I would be able to do it. And like the idea of causing an animal suffering is something that I just can't wrap my head around.
Yeah, no,
so I'm trying to cut down on eating meat for sure. Whether or not I'll manage to get to a place where I actually completely get it out of my diet, that I still am unsure of. But
yeah, my issue is with the question. It seems to be like some assessment of like what you should do or should not do. There's a problem on here about the trolley problem, or the pushing the fat man. And it says like what I think the wording on it is like what ought one do, and so I always side with the other because I'm like there's no categorical imperative on what, at least from my position. So
right.
But that all said, I am just personally, from my subjective value, empathetic towards vegetarianism or veganism, though I'm not. I ate chicken earlier today, so I can't go and claim that. But yeah, so I would want to lean towards veganism, given factory farming is pretty terrible, and I don't think they're from my perspective, and so yeah, I would from my own perspective, I would want to lean towards doing anything to end the suffering of a conscious creature from my perspective.
Right.
But I don't. The question to me about it being some ought, that can't answer that question. I'd be another. And I need to go back to analytic synthetic distinction because we didn't really define that. So just real fast, the kind of like typical example I feel like people use would be like, a triangle is analytically defined as three sides enclosed on a plane. Right. That would just like analytically define what it means to be a triangle by definition.
Mm-hmm.
You can use married bachelor, things of that nature, right?
Right.
And the synthetic aspect, if you like, well, someone would argue. I mean, someone could argue against this, but I think Kant was somebody, if I'm not mistaken, that would say like the interior angles, add up, right, to 180 degrees, and so that's some synthetic feature of the triangle that's not implicitly explained within the predicate or the definition, right, of what it means to be the triangle in the first place, right? It's like some new information essentially. I think that's kind of that distinction. I think other people take different distinctions, if I'm not mistaken. I just wanted to go back and find that again.
I do think I think I'm somewhat with Carnap on that issue. Like but again, that's one of those things where I really kind of go back and forth a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think he says something like, I mean, I do think he adopts a distinction, although a less. I don't think he defines it quite that way.
Yeah.
I think he says something like, kind of. I had some notes about it. I think he makes a distinction between like internal questions within a framework like mathematics, for example,
Okay.
and external questions that are outside any framework. So I think by internal he means logic and analytic or logically true.
Okay.
And factual, like empirical matters of observations interpreted using terms from the framework.
And then synthetic through the empirical lenses of.
And then the external. I'm trying to see here. Well, yeah, we can do a whole episode just on that, I think.
Sure. Yeah, I'm like super rusty on really anything Kant related. It's been like a year since I think I've like even touched anything Kant related, but that's my understanding. And people in the comments, please always feel free to correct, because I would maybe we go back. The aim of my philosophy is understanding. Yeah. So we go back to that question. All right, so let's move on. So we're not bogged
Did
down
that one?
here on that one. Epistemic justification, internalism, externalism. This one's always really sticky for me in terms of like when I was trying to process it, like reading about it, like it was like understanding it was weird to me.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like there was any especially when I was trying to learn kind of the lexicon and philosophy as a lay person, right? I'm reading it and just really confused on the meaning of it, and so I just wanted to give somewhat of an example. Like if you go to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, I think they do a pretty good job, but they get really quickly into like things like forms of access internalism and things where it gets bogged down quickly. So I don't know if you had a definition you wanted to maybe
Yeah. So
give that is more concise, because I've always, when I read these to people or try to explain it, I don't think it really elucidates much for them.
yeah. So as far as I understand it, I haven't taken an epistemology class in forever, but the internalist basically seems to think that whatever is going on in the mind is independent of anything external. Like it's purely an internal process.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, from my understanding, yeah, I always just contrast it with the externalist position of external reasons, right? External
Right.
epistemic or epistemic, maybe empirical reasons that justify the justification, so to speak.
Right. I think I'm probably more of an externalist.
Yeah,
Like
I
I
think
don't.
that's where I learned too.
I guess my thing is like I don't know, but I think leaning on either side is actually probably missing something. Like and this is kind of the problem I have sometimes, where I feel like
Mm-hmm.
the perspectives are posed in a way that's too black and white.
Sure.
Like I don't think that you can really separate our internal phenomenology with also what is just factually true about reality itself, like outside of us. Like I think the two are intertwined. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think Zachariah Bones puts it like, does personal experience justify belief or not, right? That's an interesting way to maybe perhaps phrase it very concisely, right? Like I'm someone that's like, no, you need external reasons. And I've heard internalists, like I have a couple friends that are internalists that give some I don't scoff at the arguments or the position by any means, but there's maybe something I'm missing on the internalist view that I need to look into more before I just
Oh,
outright. But
let me
for me, that's a lot of positions just as a skeptic. So
just to go back for a second. Let me just agree with Caesar here. Like, yeah, I don't think it is the only way in which it's morally wrong is if it's causing suffering to another being. If you could somehow, grow it in a lab without causing any harm to any consciousness, then yeah, there's nothing in principle that I would have a problem with it.
yeah. And I always find that the objections to that be strange. With like, ooh, that's gross, grown in a lab. I'm like, have you seen a cow like lifted upside down and slaughtered, and you're gonna argue that
Yeah.
that's preferable? Like even if you take the conscious suffering out, like you're gonna look at that and say that's preferable to you. You want
Right.
that process of eating rather than the lab grown? Yeah, okay, I'll take the lab grown shit, especially if it tastes good or you can control the flavor and contents. All right, so experience machine. I don't really even fully get this, right. It's like from my understanding, was it Nozick? Something
Yeah.
Nozick that wrote this. Maybe do you want to elaborate on it if you
So
I'm kind of confused on the whole thing, to be honest. So
I don't remember too much about it. I think if my memory serves me correctly, it's the thought experiment where he proposed if we could get into a machine that would bring us the perfect life, but we were just, and we wouldn't know that we were in it. But in reality, we were just like in a chamber somewhere, like plugged into some tubes or whatever, and our whole life was like kind of an illusion, but we didn't know it was an illusion. And you could have any experience that you wanted. So I would only do it if I could get out. Like if I had the option of trying it just to have the experience, to see what it was like. But I definitely wouldn't do it in like, oh, that's going to be my life now. Like I'm going to agree to just be in the Matrix type of, like that I wouldn't do. So yeah, like in the comment there, he said, you don't have to stay in, you can set it to lay you out. I actually thought, I hadn't heard that part of it. I thought that the question was, if that was going to be your whole life, would you agree to it, knowing that you could have everything you wanted, but it wouldn't actually be taking place in real life. It was just the Matrix. And I think the assumption was that most people wouldn't go into the machine.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely want to look more into that before I say yes or no. But from the sound, I would say yes. From the sound,
I would only say yes for a limited amount of time, just for the experience, but not. I wouldn't stay in the machine.
Yeah, the way that Just Questions phrases it, you can plug in. Put it on the screen for people to see in the future. You can plug in a machine that would deliver any experiences you want in advance. You don't have to stay in. You can set it to let you out. I mean, if that's the case, then yeah, I'm saying yes. But I read it, but I don't really remember much. I just remember it was some Nozick guy, if I'm not mistaken. And then I remember like looking at the Wikipedia formulation of it and trying to understand it. So that's pretty much my depth into it. Not very much at all. So anyway, next question. External world. Idealism, skepticism, non-skeptical realism. I'm a skeptic, but like, I mean, I lean towards non-skeptical realism, that there is a real world. So I don't know about you.
No, I think there's a real world.
Yeah.
I don't really understand what it means to claim otherwise. To what degree we access the world, I think, is ambiguous. I think to what degree I think I'm skeptical as far as the degree to which our perceptions capture this reality. So I don't think we can ever have full access to it, or even if we did, we wouldn't know we did as a matter of principle. But there is something that's independent of our perception, I think, is
sure. Okay, footbridge. Push a man off bridge will save 5 on the track below. What one ought do? My answer is simple. I don't think there are categorical imperatives. So the question to me doesn't really make any sense, because one ought not do any particular thing, because they're all, from my perspective, going to just align with whatever the value of the agent has. I don't know. The only thing to me, sorry, text message. The only thing that would align to me, that would make sense to bridge that, is identifying some mind-independent reason that's not tethered to desires, that could bridge what you ought to do just categorically. So to me, I'm an other, just based on the question.
Yeah, I would say that in that situation, because of the way that I look at morality and how I define well-being, any action is, in a sense, immoral there. It just on what spectrum. And I think that ultimately I would push the person to save the 5. But I also think that,
Sorry, had to do it.
But I do think it also kind of depends on who the individuals are as well. I don't necessarily think that just body count is necessarily the way to examine it. I think it's who are the people. Like obviously, if the 5 below were all serial killers, then I wouldn't push the one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
I don't think it's the question. I think is problematic. It depends on the details of the situation.
Yeah. I like Mr. Bones here. Without definitively knowing the efficacy, I would not make attempts to kill a person to save 5.
I think I think intuitively, I think I would.
Mm.
But that said, I think both actions are actually moral.
I always have an issue with information processing in these situations. To me, I don't know that how much time I have here to decide, and if it's like a normal situation, most people aren't going to be able to even act in time. And if to think that they'd hit the mark, to me is like a whole other thing. Like you have just such a perfect world scenario there that's just like I don't think it's even a reasonable scenario. You would, which to me doesn't defeat the thought experiment because you can just always rephrase it to something that's the exact same. Just identify the analogous property and move it to some other scenario. But anyway, free will, compatibilism, libertarianism, or no free will.
No, for
Yeah, I lean there, but I'm very. This is the only position that where I've heard people who are claiming to be agnostic. They're like, some days I wake up and I lean more towards theism, and some days I wake up and I lean more towards agnosticism. Atheism, and so that's why I'm an agnostic or whatever, right? And so that's the only position where I've kind of done the same. I've kind of leaned towards compatibilism and leaned towards determinism, but in no way do I think even libertarianism is a possible candidate. Just given when you ask the question, like in a situation, what explains why some agent did A over B, right? You could ask that question, and if you say that there's an explanation for it, seems to be a trail of antecedent factors leading all the way back. And I don't know how, if you say there's no explanation, then it's just random, right? So I don't know where free will fits there. But for you, what would be your position?
Yeah, I think that libertarian free will is completely doesn't make any sense. And I think compatibilism is just trying. I think it's trying to reframe. It's begging the question.
Mm-hmm.
I think. I don't think it works at all. I think it's trying to redefine free will.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that works.
That's kind of where my teeter point it always is. I've never. It's almost more of my lean towards compatibilism at times is to say that notions of what the will are, that redefinition, I kind of question that. Not that I have, here's what makes compatibilism true necessarily, but
right.
If there was a position that I could believe in, or not could believe in, that I would prefer to believe in, it would be libertarian free will.
Sure.
It would be great to believe that was true. I don't think it's epistemically responsible to take that position, just given how easy it is to show that that's not an option.
Yeah, right.
Okay, anyway, so move on to gender, biological. Sorry, I got some on my screen. Psychological, social, or unreal.
I mean, I think that for the most part, I think gender is a construction. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think there are biological differences. Like, I think there's a difference between sex and gender. I think clearly there's obviously a biological basis to the tendencies that individuals have. Right. So I think it's a combination of biological and constructed. I think some of it, like for example, the idea that certain types of clothing, belong to men, and certain type of clothing belong to women. I think that is completely a social and cultural thing. That there's no essential nature to those things.
Sure.
Now, some other aspects that people might associate with gender, like aggression or the ability to collaborate. There may be like, oh, this is generally something that is found more in one group versus the other. But I think it's on. I don't buy into like this clear and distinct binary. I think these things are on a spectrum.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, this is an area that I try to inquire more on from people, because I don't know that reading like cis white male literature on it's like the best source, right? I have an issue with that. I want to go to people that actually identify.
So I agree with Bones here. Like, gender is psychosocial, sex are biological traits, gender are culturally specific traits. So yeah, like I'm just very skeptical about gender being anything that's really out there as a real thing.
I'm on as a social construct, but there's a lot more, that it's one thing that fascinates me, because there's a lot of, like, when I listen to debates and things on the topic, there's more that I'm educated on every day by it, but some of it misses the question. I feel like when to add biological in there seems to just be strange to me, because it seems to just miss to me that gender is a distinct distinction. But I guess that's what they're saying. They're saying like they disagree with that or something.
Yeah.
They would say it's okay. Yeah. So to me, it's like it's it's social. It's pretty, but I don't really know what unreal or psychological means in that context. I need to see people's positions on that to, I guess, understand what their position is. But anyway, God theism.
Ooh, that's a hard question.
Yeah.
Obviously, atheism.
I haven't done much research on this. I haven't honestly. I'm surprised that it went down. I think it was 70-something%, if I'm not mistaken, before. But
really?
Yeah, it was 73% most positive.
That's depressing.
So 66.95% lean towards atheism. I would be in that camp. How about you?
Yeah, obviously. Atheism.
Yeah, I would accept atheism. All right. Knowledge, empiricism, or rationalism? Well, I think I already answered this.
Yeah, I think I lean more towards the empiricism route.
Yeah. Knowledge claims contextualism, relativism, or invariantism. This is something I would need to fully understand, like invariantism.
I forget what that is referring to. Let me just take a quick look. I know I've definitely heard the term before, but I can't remember.
Sure.
Let me see real quick. It's the position that the proposition expressed by knowledge sentences does not vary with the epistemic standard of the context in which the sentences can be used. I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, there's a lot of unpacking to do there.
Well, maybe we'll go back to that.
Sure. All right. Oh yeah, laws of nature. Humean, non-Humean. Probably would need to elaborate on this if you want to pull up a definition on that. I lean towards Humean, though I don't. I guess I guess Humean would be what regularity, reference to like regularities. I haven't spent a lot of time really looking at arguments for and against as much. Again, I'm a lay person in philosophy, but do you have a specific position on that?
I think that what we call laws are more generalizations. Like, we don't have any certainty that these constants are going to stay what they are. Like, these are the patterns that we observe and the expectations that we have as to what we're going to find. But there's no like certainty there. So I do think we're probably talking more about patterns, and I'm probably more human. I lean towards more human.
Okay.
So I just real quick, I found something that was differentiating between those terms in epistemology a little more. Contextualists argue that a sentence can be true in one context, but on another, not another. While environmentalism states that the truth or falsity of a sentence, like for example, Mary knows that the bank is open on Saturday, does not shift from context to context. So, yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, I think it depends, right? Like, I think there are certain statements that, just by virtue of the
I
way
would
in which
assume
they're
you'd be
framed,
I assume you would be under more of like contextualism but that might be just under
but I think it depends on what the sentence is. Like, there are certain things that just by the
sure.
rules of the language, they're only going to mean what they mean.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other things where it's like, well, it depends on how the words are being used, how the symbolism is being used. Like, so I don't know. It's definitely something that I have to look more in depth. Um, like I said before, I lean more continental than I do analytic.
Sure.
So these are not definitely not my strong suit here. Like,
No worries. Yeah, no one's on trial here. Actually, axioms are on trial. That's the point, right? Logic, classical, non-classical, lean towards classical, but
yeah, I lean towards classical.
yeah, I mean, I'm open towards other forms of logic and hearing them out. So, nothing. Meaning of life, subjective, objective, non-existent. Non-existent, I would say, or subjective. But if you're saying an objective, it's clearly subjective. But if the question was like, is there an objective meaning of life? Yeah, I'm saying no to that question. And if the next thing is there no meaning of life? Well, there isn't an objective one, but there is a subjective one.
So again, that depends on how you define those terms. Like, if by objective you mean mind independent, then no. But
Yeah, that's
subjectively,
what I
then
mean.
in terms of subjective, obviously there is a meaning.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think that the subjective meaning is actually derived from a shared universal experience, like a state of being that is actually universal.
mm-hmm.
And like I might get to that state by playing music, and somebody else might get to that state by playing sports. But the state is actually the same one.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to look at comments here. Subjective and non-existent are weird response options to provide. That's was my thing in terms of like them together, because I'm like, I don't think there is an existent meaning of life other than in virtue of subjective. It seems I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking at it weird. Um,
Yeah, a lot of these things is like, well, you need to kind of define the terms a little bit more in depth because not everybody is defining those terms the same way.
yeah, I would. Well, so would you? I mean, in virtue of that, like, would you say other just because of the question or something? You'd say,
Yeah, like obviously, I think everything we're talking about is obviously always going to be through the lens of subjectivity, but
yeah.
that doesn't mean that we can. It doesn't mean that it's all relative.
Sorry,
Um,
phone call. Let me put my phone on silent.
it's still like we can look at the totality of subjective experience and actually see that there are universal uh, values and universal experiences that we can point to. They're just experienced subjectively. And it's always
Sure.
I always give the example of two different people are looking at the glass on a table. Like, yeah, I experience the glass subjectively as because I'm one individual. You experience subjectively as being one individual. But when we can talk about what we're seeing in objective terms, like in a way that we can actually understand each other and know that we're talking about the same type of thing. Uh, so,
Sure.
what is the next question?
Oh, let me skip back to the page here. Mental content, internalism, externalism. This is probably something we should define pretty specifically, or at least maybe provide an actual academic definition. I don't know if you have one pulled up. I didn't get this far in terms of having anything. I didn't really get prepared. We just kind of had some things. I think you had some notes just ready at your disposal,
Well,
but I'm not expecting you to have this.
well, no, I mean, doesn't this kind of goes back to the other question, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
we had prior. Um, yeah, I'm undecided on those issues. Um, it's like one of those things where, like, one day I'll wake up and I'll be like, I think it is. I lean towards one making more sense than the other. It's
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would. Yeah, a lot with internal justification and mental content, these types of things. Even like a definition of knowledge of justified true belief or something like that. I'm a little skeptical um, on committing. So maybe not sure that there's a answer that I could lean towards at the moment for any of those.
I
If I'm
wonder
putting my
what
feet to the fire.
I wonder what they mean by other.
So like people,
For
I think it says insufficiently familiar or skipped, but in the older ones you could filter the results, and it had a lot of different options, if I'm not mistaken. Like, or maybe that was the new one where it would say um, a a different position or new philosophy or something, right? Like it would have some kind of it'd have like a
list.
plethora of different
So the
things.
question is meta ethics,
Under
moral
other.
realism, or moral anti-realism, and so it's, do you lean towards more realism, anti-realism, or other?
Well, so
I'm not sure.
your question is like we have a true dichotomy, and you're wondering why there's an other in
Like, I
between.
wonder just what is meant by other there. Obviously, I'm a more realist.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna assume that people don't have a position. They're agnostic on other, or they've skipped it. They're not familiar with it, or maybe they claim, maybe they have some, like, I don't know if postmodernist view would come into play, and they just say that this is the wrong lens of viewing it in the first place, right? There's the whole list of things in other that you could put there.
Well, I
And
think the postmodern approach would be an anti-realist one.
well, yeah, so I'm not familiar with really postmodernism in any way, so I wouldn't know, but that's just something I would think off the top of my head. But um, I always thought they had a problem with like every word you use was always my kind of understanding of them. Like they can't even communicate with them because they're just like, I'm skeptical about that everything you say. But
Oh,
anyway,
in the comments here, uh, Just Questions wrote, most are constructivist or pragmatist. There's also a few quasi-realists and Kantians.
mm,
So yeah, I mean that makes more sense. I would say, like I said, I'm a more
that's right.
realist.
Quasi realism is kind of on the rise, isn't it? I mean, I'm not too familiar with the position as much, but um, I probably, looking into it, I'd probably be concerned on the quasi realism. I'm very skeptical on that term. But anyway, let me get, and as Just Questions puts it too. I can't speak today. I'm sorry, guys. I'm still waking up. Bear with me. I swear I'm okay. Meta ethics, moral realism or moral anti-realism. I lean towards moral realism. No, I'm just kidding. I lean towards moral anti-realism, but it needs to be said, I was a moral realist. Before that, I was a moral anti-realist. And then before I got into philosophy, if someone asked me the question, I was probably a moral realist. So I think I have a big sandwich of flipping, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty confidently a moral anti-realist. Though, like I said at the beginning of the show, moral skeptic is the term that I'd probably tell people in everyday language. And so, yeah, I'm skeptical of the idea of independent facts of the matter. And sorry to go on a long-winded thing, but the last thing I would say, to me, it relates back to this idea that if you saved some kid from like a burning building or something, and someone asked you like why you went in there and saved them, it seems this is not the only thing I rested on, but this seems to put it in perspective to me about how incoherent the position is from my perspective. Is you wouldn't be like, I recognize the mind-independent duty that I should save the kid, right? That's a very strange notion to me. You would say, I recognize desires tethered, or values tethered to my desires or to my mental states, and that's why I acted, not because there's some independent duty out there in the world, right? That's what, for me, why it seems to be an incoherent position outside of the logical issues that I would have of deriving normativity from descriptive premises. But yeah, sorry, long-winded, but that would be that would sum up why I just think the thesis of realism is incoherent to me in some ways. Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh,
No, I was saying no,
Sorry.
no. Like I said, my position is that I think it depends on how these terms are being defined. Like, if by moral realism, do they mean mind independence, or do they mean that some moral foundations actually exist in the world, whether it exists through subjective experience? I'm unsure. Like,
Well, would you say if every person, not to get into the dilemma of meta ethics at the moment, but I guess the question I'd have would be like, if everybody had the same, like, we could identify, right? I'm a subjectivist, and would be like, okay, everybody does have the same exact desire to like not want to be hurt or whatever we identify it as the moral fact, or maybe not the moral fact, but the commonality between the desires. Would you say that that is objective? Because for me, I'm saying that's just some universal thing that we might share, but there's nothing that makes that an objective thing, right, of the matter, right? That just seems to be constitutive of a conscious creature, not necessarily an objective fact when you talk about mind independency, because it's just tethered to the mind.
But are there
even if it's
again,
everybody has the same thing?
I guess I think it's about how we're defining facts. Like, we can have facts that are true about minds. So, like, if by objective one just means mind independent, well, then there's not much hope for any kind of talk in terms of objectivity there. But that's not really what it is that I mean when I talk about it. Like, I'm talking about, obviously, when we talk about morality, we're talking about things that are mind dependent and consciousness dependent. That doesn't mean that anything goes. Like,
so
if
you
there's
just
a nature,
reject that notion, then you just kind of reject that idea.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, the semantics don't really matter. Like, I think
you don't think it's like some non-negotiable thing, right? Like,
it's like, okay, the label is relevant. It's not relevant to me. It's like, well, let me phrase it this way, because words do matter. But what I mean is, when I talk to somebody about these issues, it's like, how are you defining these terms? Like, how do you understand these terms for yourself? I don't think that the notion of oughts become lost or nonsensical if you admit that morality is mind dependent. I think oughts are just like a symbol or a type of word to describe what we mean where values arise. Like, I think that's the fundamental difference between you and I.
Okay.
Is that I don't think that values are kind of arbitrary. Like, I think values arise from something specific that we can discover, we can examine, we can deconstruct and understand its context and foundations. And so yes, like, I'm a subjectivist in the sense that we're all experiencing these things subjectively, but then we can talk about these experiences in universal terms and still maintain like a why we ought to do X as opposed to Y. I think that question still makes sense, even if you approach it in a subjective way.
Sure. Yeah. Well, then, yeah. There's a lot there because if you agree with, we'll get into the third part 3 of it in another video. But yeah, I'll leave it there, and we'll get into that because I think if I respond, you'll have we'll just we could talk about that forever.
See, sorry, just one real quick.
Yeah, no problem.
This question's right. It seems to me like the rules of chess are true, but I disagree with that because the rules of chess are like, yes, once you've agreed to those rules, then the rules are the rules, but the rules themselves could have been anything. Like they were purely constructed. I don't think that what is morally right or wrong is purely constructed, like as a social thing. I think it is derived from facts about consciousness and our nature and our biology. Like they're not arbitrary, like chess, I think is.
Okay. Metaphilosophy, naturalism, non-naturalism. I lean towards naturalism. What say you?
I'm a natural. Obviously, I'm also a naturalist.
Yeah. Mind, physicalism or non-physicalism? Well, I'm still really in that camp of reductive physicalist, though. I think Kane B and a few other people that I listen to have had some interesting takes on non-physicalism as somebody that's not a theist, and not to say that influences it, but it seems to me, for like when I have discussions with most people where they're arguing against physicalism, like it's just baked into some conclusion of theism that they're trying to prove from the offset, as opposed to like hearing someone that's like, yeah, I don't believe there's a God, and I'm not a physicalist. That to me, I want to hear those arguments and the derivations you make to like get there, right? I want to hear that because and people could say this, theists will say this is disingenuous. I am convinced that no theist, not no theist, but no theist I've talked to at least, just started with some non-physical perspective that led them to like God. It's always that they're trying to prove that. It's always baked into the to me, it's begging the question, but I know it's a claim, it's assertion, but that's just.
I definitely want to. I want to have Kane on the show at some point, and we had a brief interaction in the comment section. So one of his videos, because I disagree a lot with the things he's saying, and I appreciate his perspective, but I just completely think that he's off the mark on some of those things, and hopefully we can have him on sometime soon to talk about these questions. So I think he would be a good addition to have on a panel. The panel we want to have about moral realism and anti-realism. I think he's one of the people that we should bring on. I do have to go over some of his videos, but I've only listened to them.
He's great on that in terms of like it would just be a good discussion. It wouldn't be like very hostile in terms of
no at all.
So which is nice. Did I skip one? Okay, yeah, you said physicalism.
Yeah.
Moral judgment, cognitivism, non-cognitivism. I think we both agree. I'm cognitivist. I think that the truth aptness of the proposition is dependent upon the subject. And if I'm not a subjectivist, then I'm an error theorist, which is a form of cognitivism because the truth value is just always false.
Yeah.
So I would be a cognitivist either way. I think, I don't know if you recall, I was a non-cognitivist, but I actually switched to cognitivism. So.
Yeah, I would say it's mind. Any moral judgments are mind dependent. Like it doesn't make sense to talk about morality outside of the context of consciousness and its entailments. So, yeah.
Moral motivation, internalism, externalism.
Moral. Uh, I think it's. I think it's both. Uh, I mean, I think it's obviously, our experiences are internal, right? But they're also in relation to how we're navigating the world and our interaction with the other. I always that distinction always bothers me. I think there is a problem in the way in which that is
with
framed.
internalism, externalism. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that it muddies the waters.
That's fine. Let's move on for time because we'll have to do part 2 on this, which is fine. I don't mind doing that. Well, maybe not. I don't know how. It just I'm looking here and it looks like
Yeah, there's a lot.
Newcomb's box. I think one box is where I was at when I looked at this like a couple of years ago. So that's what I'm going to say, but I need to look at it again. But I'm pretty sure when I studied this or looked at this, because I can't say I studied it because I didn't go to school to study it. I just did it on my own time. I think I sided with one box.
I honestly don't remember what that is talking about there. What is the example?
I try to remember it. I believe it's the. I would be
Is it
able
like
to
a game theory type of thing?
I want to say it's the. I need to just Google it to get my recollection because from my understanding, it's like the infallible computer. And
so this says here that the problem, there's a reliable predictor, another player,
yes,
and the two boxes designated A and B. The player is given a choice between taking only box B or taking both boxes A and B. The player knows the following. Box A is clear and always contains visible $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Box B is opaque and its contents have already been set by the predictor. If the predictor has predicted the player will take both boxes A and B, then box B contains nothing. If the predictor has predicted that the player will take only box B, then box B contains $1 million. Is that $1 million?
Yeah, 1 million.
The player does not know what the predictor predicted or what box B contains while making the choice.
Yeah, I went with, and then they have the game theory strategies. If you just go to like the Wikipedia, from my understanding, because I remember being very confused on this when I remember even talking to my brother about it and trying to like dissect it with him, and he doesn't really like get into philosophy, but he's entertained by certain thought experiments, and so I presented that to him, and I remember us discussing that, and it kind of came to like. We just were like, yeah, you would go with one box, but or what would be box? What is the choice if if the predictor has predicted that the player will take both boxes A and B, then B contains nothing. My always problem was with like if it's an infallible predictor, then I need to know more about what that means because it can never be wrong, which to me kind of motivates the answer intuitively. But anyway, I don't want to spend much time on this.
I'm probably leaning towards one box, but this is the first.
I don't fully understand it. So, normative ethics, deontology, consequentialism, or virtue ethics.
I tend to be more on the consequentialist side of things.
Yeah, I've flipped on this a lot, but yeah, I'm not even going to lean toward position here. I'm still going to with my position as like not knowing if I'm an error theorist or subjectivist. I know I'm an anti-realist. I've switched from non-cognitivism, like a form of emotivism, and recognizing problems there. And so there's a lot more that I'm getting into on my own. So I'm just gonna leave that blank. Come back to that when we revisit these things, maybe a year later or 2 years later, and have a more informed metaethical theory just in general. So perpetual experience, disjunctivism, qualia theory, representationalism or sense datum theorem or theory? I'm sorry.
um, trying to think here. I think I definitely am not on the representationalism, but see, that's one of those things where again I go back and forth a lot.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I find utility in a lot of the, like I'm probably in the other camp. I'm not sure that these exhaust potential theories of perceptual experience. So yeah, I'm gonna decide another for now. But I don't know. Yeah, I need philosophy of mind is also something that I want to get more into to have a more informed.
I mean I don't know, because like I do think that.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. Can we back up for a second?
Yeah.
What we like, because and I don't want to spend time on normative ethics real fast, but like, what do you think about like contractarianism or something? Because that's maybe position in like other or something, or some form of the.
I think that it's incomplete. Like I think I understand their perspective, like wider, but I don't think that's really the foundation. Really, like I think, yeah, but yeah, I would say more of a consequentialist.
Sure. Okay.
But as far as the next question, like, I mean, I tend to appreciate. Like I am skeptical as to what degree we're like coming into full contact with objects that are out there. Like I do think so. In some way, like I can understand the representationalist perspective there, but I also, I think it's something that is deserving of an entire episode itself.
Yeah, sure. I would agree.
I think we'll have to go back to that because I can't.
Me and you have talked, and I've had issues with like qualia, like just in general, and I think you've been someone that is critical on like Dennett's kind of view.
I mean, I think the foundation of everything we're talking about is qualia. I don't to say that qualia is like an illusion. I think is more ridiculous than a God claim, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, yeah, we do need to do the philosophy of mind conversation between the two of us. So maybe we can touch upon that there. Personal identity, biological view, psychological view, or further fact view. I need to look more into this. Anything with identity or identity over time, I have very much interest, but I need to.
I think, yeah, I think a lot of what we assume about identity is more psychological than anything else. But the problem I have with a lot of these questions is that I think they create false dichotomies, or rather, I think with something like identity, what contributes to our notions of identity are probably all those things.
Sure. Oops, thought I put it on silent.
But I think it's probably more psychological.
Okay. And we can, I guess, let's use this one to wrap it up. I'm a little over time. I gotta go decorate the Christmas tree at my family's house. So philosophical methods, which methods are the most useful or important? To me, that ascribes some like categorical, like imperative of what to me it seems to be normative, right? And I don't know that there's like a one right one, objectively speaking, considering it's a subjective. Philosophy is just entirely subjective anyway. But yeah, I go towards the empirical philosophy, but I take considerations to conceptual analysis, obviously. But it just depends on what you mean by those terms, and if you're somebody that thinks a priori kind of analysis is prevalent in what defines things deductively, like, in a nice little box for you, then I could understand where your position lines. But for me, I'm just as somebody that I think I don't lean towards like a scientism, but I do lean towards, I think science could potentially be the only way to actually know things about the world, from, or at least the empirical lens seems to think that everything runs through an empirical lens. And if it's the case that the empirical or the a posteriori considerations are just prevalent throughout the world, then there's not a theory or way you couldn't look at it from that lens and apply some methodology of falsification and that nature. So for me, it's like, I don't even know what it would look like for that to not be relevant in terms of methodology. So I would lean towards that's the most useful.
No, I think I'm on the similar thoughts there. I think, I don't do philosophy just for the kind of the thought experiments or just for fun. Like, I think philosophy is especially valuable when you can apply it in your own life in a concrete way. So I think applied philosophy, I think, is incredibly important, not just
Sure.
kind of abstract speculations.
Sure.
So, but again, I'm kind of all over the spectrum. So
yeah. All right.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to continue this another time.
Yeah, we will. Sorry, I'm trying to get my phone on silent so I don't keep getting calls, making a lot of noise. But yes, we will definitely retouch that. I think we're at philosophical progress, I believe. And we can continue there, and then that can get into political philosophy and things of that nature. So yeah, we do appreciate everybody tuning in today. Cease, is there anything you want to mention before we shut it down, and while I get the cues up?
No, hopefully we can figure out that issues with the comments that was going on, because I would hate for people to leave comments and them not showing up, especially if it's like really constructive feedback. I want to make sure that I get a chance to see it. And you guys are always welcome to email us if somehow the comments don't go through. axiomsontrial@gmail.com if you guys have any feedback that you want to share with us. Outside of that, not much else to say. Hopefully we can be back either maybe tomorrow. I don't know what we agreed on when you're free next.
Yeah, I would say there is a good 75% chance I'm good with that. I'm tomorrow going over to a buddy's and starting I wouldn't say a vacation, but I get actually 2 days off from work. So, and we're going to a show. We're going to see AEW wrestling. So if you are a fan,
congrats! That's awesome.
Yeah, so if you guys are gonna, you're a fan. I'm not like a WWE fan by any means, but AEW is pretty kick-ass, and we will be second row hard cam. So,
dude, I hope I get to see you there. I will be so happy.
Look on the left side. You will.
I'm excited for that. That's awesome.
I paid too much for the ticket. I'm not gonna say how much I paid on the air, but it was too much. I'll put it that way. So, but. Yeah, and look, I wasn't gonna. I'm just gonna say this. We weren't gonna spend that money. Me and Corbin talked on the phone. I'm gonna leave this last little personal thing before we go off. But we were gonna settle with I'll just say 170, right? I'll give that figure. It was that's where we were gonna be that's the most I'll spend. Okay. And then I look at the seats around us that are really expensive, 600, 500.
Jesus.
And I'm yeah, I can't do those front rows like you wanted to do. And then one opens up and I'm looking. That's at a ridiculous price in comparison to that. And I'm the one setting. I can't pay more than that. And I just turned to Corbin, dude, you just go ahead and buy them. I'll send you the money. Just buy them now. And he's yo, he actually ended up just covering the whole thing and for 3 people. which was a lot of money in one
That's crazy.
transaction, and we paid them back. But I was like, bro, you have to get these because this is like the most kick-ass deal I've ever seen. So yeah, long-winded to say, we got really good seats for a steal of a price. Still pretty expensive though. But yeah.
I'll be definitely keeping an eye out to see you. I mean, I don't follow really wrestling anymore. But although I started to watch a little bit of what AEW is doing, and I think they're really, in comparison to what's out there, like really great, especially recently. But yeah, I'm more like a MMA guy. But yeah, but I'll definitely keep an eye out. That'll be great if I get to see you on there. Actually, a friend of mine from the department was at one of the shows not too long ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, something that's like I've always wanted to do, and luckily that ticket, it's great when you buy something a while back, like way back, and then the event happens like months later, because then you're just like that kind of hurt of spending money doesn't, the pain's like gone, because it's been a little time, you've gotten a few more paychecks, but anyway.
As a quick news for everybody listening, Mike and I might actually do a show in person, like at the same place.
Right. Yeah.
Coming, I'm hoping January. I'm gonna see if I can come there in January. But but I'll keep you posted. I'm still waiting to find out a couple things, but that's the plan. So
100%. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, so look out for that. And I didn't know it'd be that soon. So
yeah,
that's great. And maybe we can hopefully get a couple shows.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Get one with Max as well. That'd be great. Alrighty. Well, we thank you. Yeah. Patreon.com/AxiomsOnTrial if you want to support us. You can also support us in the live chat and every show with super chat donations. And then you can also just like and subscribe and comment and help us out there. Or just watch the video. You are not forced to do anything. We really just appreciate that you took your time to spend it with us, because you could spend it anywhere else. And so we appreciate anyone that gave their valuable time to us. Take care, everybody. And love one another.
See you next time.
All the hatred. Peace.